Good evening, everyone. Can I start now?
Yes, please start.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, from wherever location you are. Uh, my name is Rita and I'm Michael. I'm into security risk management. Before I proceed, I would like to sincerely thank everyone for taking time out, and also for the AYSN network for giving me the opportunity to share just a bit of what I've been able to learn the past couple of years. All right, so we'll just jump right into it. And the topic today is data to decisions, a practical step-by-step guide to open source intelligence for professionals, analysis, and decision making in security context. So I believe everyone here on this call is somewhat way has to do with has to do with data analysis. They dabble with data information, what is data, what is information, and then how is it then called open source intelligence? How do we get these things that have been led to intelligence at the end of the day? So it is something that everyone, regardless of the work of their walk of life, it's what they do and it's what we use. So as analysts, as people in the security industry, as professionals in any sphere at all, I would like to say that open source intelligence is something that you should harness and use. Before we jump right into it, we would have 5 objectives. The first one is to define OSINT. We know what OSINT is, and then it's open source intelligence. We'll find out what the intelligence cycle entails. We'll talk about sources, source classifications, collection techniques. How do we collect this data that will lead into information and then at the end of the day be interpreted into intelligence? And just also talk about the future of intelligence in terms of open source intelligence. All right. So before we go into what open source intelligence is and all of the things that are in between it, we need to first define what intelligence is. And one thing we need to know is that every day an unimaginable amount of data is being created, but raw data alone isn't just power. Turning that data into actionable intelligence is what separates insight from noise. And today we're going to explore more of that. Now, in the third slide, which shows defining intelligence, yes, you can see there are 3 circles there. The first one shows raw data. And when we talk about raw data, what does that mean? It means unprocessed information, facts, and figures without context. We also have information. Now, before we even go into information and intelligence, I'll give a case study so that we understand how things go from data to intelligence. 3 years ago, I was sent on an assignment by the Center of the Studies of Economy of Africa, CC, based here in Abuja, Nigeria. And we had to go and collect information, or we're supposed to gather intelligence on out of school children. But they needed the collection process to be at least 98% accurate because previously they had encountered those informations being collected, not being factual. And so I'm going to use this story to explain how we went from raw data to intelligence. Day one, we were told that we're going to collect data from an amount of schools. They mentioned about 8 to 9 schools. And then they mentioned that we would go to look at their parents, meet their parents. So we had to go to marketplaces, we had to go to organizations, we had to go to numerous places. And so the first day, what we did was that we went to all the schools. We just collected information. We just collected, how many students are this year old, what's the range of the people that are here in senior secondary school, examination class, all of that. We did that the first day. So that's the first form of, intelligence, raw data. That's the first process, raw data. On the second day, what we did was now to sieve it based on what we wanted to get. And in sieving information, what you then know is that you start recognizing trends. And so once we started sieving it based on how many students in SS1 senior secondary school are of this age or have sat for exams more than once, we're able to now analyze trends. And after the end of, sieving it based on what we wanted, we were able to ascertain 1 or 2 trends that also made to decision making in terms of how grants will be given to these people. So we went from collecting facts for it to lead into intelligence. And another thing to know when it comes to, because we also talk about the intelligence cycle, is that Even if you have reached intelligence as a stage, it is still a loop. Something based on what you have been able to find would make you go back again to start analyzing data. So what this means is that when it comes to intelligence, it passes through it as data and then information before it leads to intelligence. Now we're going to talk about how did OSINT come about? How did it happen? When did it start? How did we get here? How did people start? How did OSINT come about? Is it now? What necessitated that form of collection? Why not other? Because obviously there are other sources of collection, but open source is ethical and it's something just anybody can do if being guided right. So how did OSINT come about? In the World War II and Cold War, the government at the time, they relied heavily on monitoring foreign newspapers, reports, radio stations for signs, warnings, and even insight that would help with their strategy. So at the time, it was slow, it was manual and it required human analysis, but it was still a powerful intelligence model and method at that time that helped with, valuable information that was hidden in plain sight. So it started in the World War II and the Cold War. And how were they getting open source intelligence? Like I mentioned, radio, it was very, very integral at that point. But then we have also seen that we have moved from relying on radio stations, newspapers, to now us being in the digital era, which is in the early 2000s. Now we have social media, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have X. We have news sites, news blogs, all of those things. Now we're in the digital era that we don't need to start waiting for a certain radio station to talk about it at a certain time. We now have readily available information via all these things. But here's the problem now. Every single information that goes out there has the probability of being factual or not. How are we going to be able to, distinguish those two? You see it in the class as we go. So we had the digital era, and then in the 1980s, you also saw that there was an OSINT right, like I mentioned. And in modern day now, we have different types of information and how it's being gathered. I was on TikTok some days ago and I realized that what is happening now with news bloggers or gossip blogs is that they use AI. So it's an individual that is talking, but it's not the real face. But here's the thing, the person is still giving information. So we can see that OSINT in itself, which started in the Cold War and World War II, has now metamorphosed into another type and another level. Now, like I mentioned, it originated in the military, and intelligence communities had to gather publicly available national security data. I did mention that during the Cold War, intelligence prioritized humans and signals before OSINT rose in the 1980s. So what that means is that they were relying on human intelligence, hearsay. This person said this, the king said this is what is happening, before OSINT rose in the 1980s. And the internet and social media also expanded into digital sources, like I mentioned, and now you can collect information step by step, day by day. But the thing is, for it to even be regarded as OSINT, it has to do with a rigorous process of analysis and interpretation of data. It is open to the public. So for something to be open to the public, it means that somebody can say something that can influence the information in itself. So OSINT in itself, you rely on data, public records, all these things are made to the public, and it focuses on connecting existing data. Go to ChatGPT for it to get so fabric a certain amount of information. It's able to get that for you, so it's publicly available. So when you think of OSINT, you mean open. It's not closed. Now, what's the classification of OSINT sources? We have SOTMINT. SOTMINT has to do with mapping user relations and behavioral patterns. You have SIBINT rather. That's analyzing IPs, DNS records, SSL certifications. You have GeoINT and IMENT, using satellite imagery and geolocation metadata, so you can track physical activities via that. And then you also have the dark web, accessing non-indexed areas for leaked information, monitoring illicit marketplaces for stolen data. Now, this wasn't fully classified, but as of now, these are the ones that are in vogue. Now, who leverages on open source intelligence? You have journalists. They use it for investigation, fact-checking, and verifying source claims. You have cyber and security professionals that use it. You have law enforcement that use it. and you have corporations that use it to gather information. To also know, open source intelligence, the use of open source intelligence is not just for information that is really in relation to security. It could also be used for getting information for any topic at all. So it's not just security bound. Any organization, any industry can actually make use of it. It's just a form of data collection. So what are the principles of sound analysis? We have ascertained that it's in the public. It is available to just anyone. So if things are available just to anyone, you can be rest assured that with what you have gathered, not all of it is factual. So what are the principles of analyzing that if that data that you have gotten that would lead to intelligence? Number one, you have to question assumptions. One thing when we had to get information at the time was that we were not looking at people by their faces, the students by their faces. We'll just look at this person and say, this person looks like a junior student. This person looks like a senior student. No. We don't do that. We consider underlying motives. Are we actually collecting this information to know people that look mature or to know their actual age? So you have to question those assumptions, and you cannot be biased with it. So the next thing is to seek multiple sources. Now you have gotten information. There's a reason why they said we should go to six schools. Is to be able to seek for multiple sources. Because once you do that, you're able to cross-check independently to avoid single source bias. The third one is to analyze context. You have gathered the data, you're forming it into information. What is the context? Understand the history and environment behind the data. And then the last one is to avoid cognitive shortcuts. Stay aware of what you are supposed to do and remove emotional reasoning errors. A major thing I would always say when we collect information or when I and my team collect information is you should reduce empathy. You should also reduce hearsay. You need to be sure. You cannot be, as a lady, I'll give an instance. We had to collect data, capture data to write a report about GBV, gender-based violence. I'm a lady, and such topics are very touchy. And so I'm not going to say that certain incidents have led to a certain situation because that is my assumption. Is it what it is? Is it not what it is? In some cases, there are some people that are being involved. Would I be able to collect this data well based on what I know about the person or based on what the person has done as a guy? So you need to remove emotion. Once emotion and bias comes in the way, you can be rest assured that your information, the intelligence you have been able to get, the output, it is not that it is not right, but it might not be right for the scenario or for the reason why you want to make use of it. Now, we have mentioned that open source, there are different, it has gone through different eras. There are different types and classifications of it. How do we get it? We have seen that this thing is open source. To be able to get factual data that is correct, what do? We use the intelligence cycle. And the intelligence cycle has a 6-step process from direction to dissemination, but it's a loop. And so even when you have reached the dissemination phase, based on what you have gotten, you might be able to go back again, or you might have to go back. So it's not just a one-time thing. It is continuous. Now, most of us know the intelligence cycle. For some of us that don't know the intelligence cycle, I'll go through it just a bit. The first stage is collection. You have collected raw data. At this point, you are not sieving it. You're just collecting as many as you can. The next thing is processing. Now, processing is now where the sieve comes into place. You organize and format data for meaningful analysis. Now, the third one is analysis in itself. You are interpreting the data to find patterns and draw conclusions. You also have the feedback. Oh, sorry, my bad. You have the direction, you have the collection, you have the feedback. You evaluate the intelligence impacts and refine the future steps. Then you have processing before you have dissemination and analysis. Now, in the last stage of analysis, when you need to recollect data or you need to find other patterns. So that's why I said it's a loop. It keeps going, it keeps going. When we gathered the information with the other team members, we realized, okay, we need to collect more data on this topic because it would help us analyze trends. So we did it again. We went back to the collection phase again. So it's not just a one-time thing. It is not a one-time thing. Now, when we talk about, I decided to put a point, which is strategic intelligence and tactical intelligence, because it is by the result of what you have gotten that one of the answer lies between one of these two things. When we talk about strategic intelligence, it's more long term. It's you're looking at the bigger picture. It helps with leaders planning on the long term. I'll give an instance. You have patterns. Once you're finished studying patterns like banditry in the northwest, insurgency trends in the northeast, or just oil theft in the Niger Delta, agencies, once they have gotten the information that have been gathered, you can now be able to analyze these trends to shape security policies and also have preventive measures. So strategic intelligence is long term. Now, tactical intelligence is short term. What that means is that it's immediate and it's operational. So the information that I've gotten, what's the next step? So for the example I gave for the Center for the Studies of Economy, the information that we got was more long-term. So it had to be sent back to know what to do. So it wasn't immediate. But then I'll give another instance where there was an incident of they had recurring incidents occurring at a certain time. So we had to gather the information. Immediately we're able to give the report. They made the decision on what next to do. So it supports real-time action. So whatever information you are gathering, once you have reached the intelligence, it's two aspects to it. Is it going to be tactical or is it going to be strategic? So based on what you have gotten, it falls with one of these. It has to be that strategic or tactical. In some cases, it can go from being tactical to strategic based on what you have been able to get. So we just need to understand that strategic intelligence helps you prepare, while tactical intelligence responds to immediate threats. So what are the practical OSINT tools? We have said information is out there. What can you use? Social media monitoring. I remember when I used to work with a security firm, we would always have something called TweetDeck. Now, I didn't know about it at the time, but what it does is that it can even see the information down to words that are being said. So if somebody says Rita Michael, or somebody says African Youth Security Network, and you just put that, every single information that has to do with what you have mentioned or the word that you have put has gone there. It makes it easier to see. In that case, you can now see the timing it had been done. You can see other corroborating information. That would help you fasten or even help, give efficacy to the information you are collecting. Geolocation and mapping tools. What we're experiencing right now is the proliferation of AI videos. And it's mostly on Facebook and TikTok. Well, it's everywhere, but it's mostly on Facebook. And I remember there was one that was so real that we had to look at it over and over and over again. And I said, you know what? Let's check the imagery analysis. There's a picture there. We went and checked it on Google and we realized that it was not a factual film, but it looked so real. So for some of us, once we have some pictures, you can run it through.
We go do the 8,000.
You can run it through verification. The third one is public records and government databases for identity and document checks. I remember going to a library. I needed to get information on this, and then just going to the library, they had some records that helped me out. At that time, I didn't know, but you can have some public records that would help you with your search. The fourth one is search engines and advanced search operators for targeted discovery. There are a lot of search engines. And also visualization also helps present relationships. That's where you make use of Tableau, you make use of infographics to help that. And then another thing is that sometimes you have to combine these tools to verify. So it doesn't mean that you only use one, you only use TweetDeck. No. You could make use of newspaper publications. There are some newspaper publications, there are some newspapers that that if you check it, you have to check for another source. You have Sahara, you have Arise, you have channels. Not saying that these people give factual information, but you can be able to corroborate. So when it comes to practical OSINT tools, you're not just talking about one tool. You can use more than one tool to be able to see at least if it is if it's factual or not. Now, what are the common mistakes to avoid? Like I mentioned, over-reliance on one source. The source might be correct, but just corroborate with other sources to be sure. I've seen in cases whereby we had trusted in a specific source, and there was a time they brought out information that somebody had died. Even if they put allegedly, just saying that allegedly does not really stop you. Is even in as much as in reports we write these things allegedly, it doesn't really stop you from what you're seeing. So you need to be careful of that. Confirmation bias, only seeking data that supports your initial hypothesis. Like I said, Once there's a bias, it affects the information in itself. Now, the third point is volume versus value, which means confusing a large amount of data with high quality intelligence. For some of us, there are reports that we have, they are bulky from intelligence reports that we have, and because of how bulky it is, you prioritize it over maybe a 1 or 2 page expose that somebody has said. Now, what this means is that the fact that it is long, it's lengthy, does not mean it is good in it's better than a 1 or 2 page expose. So you need to be able to see that. And number four, weak reporting. Producing analysis that is not actionable or evidence-based. What does this mean? For every intelligence report you have gotten through the use of OSINT, there are two things. It should be evidence-based and it should be actionable. Remember I mentioned that there's strategic intelligence and tactical intelligence. In as much as one is long term and the other is short term, there is one thing that is imperative. You have to give an advisory or an outlook or findings that is actionable and evidence-based. If it is not evidence-based, it cannot be used, because in that place it will now be considered as hearsay, meaning it has a probability of being more wrong than it is right. Now, in conclusion, using public data with disciplined analysis avoids common pitfalls and applies best practices to protect lives, assets, and national interests. I'd also like to add here that once we have been able to get the report based on using the intelligence cycle, whatever report that you are going to give, it is important that emotions are not used to it. There are some terminologies that should not be used to it, and it is more straight to the point. At the end of your report, if need be, it is important to list your sources. Why is this so? Because it doesn't belong to you. In as much as the analysis is done by you, it doesn't belong to you. So what is being done, or what we do sometimes when a report has been given, we put the sources there so that you can also verify through your own means. You also need to apply legal and ethical standards to protect privacy and data. It is open for a reason. It is open to everybody. And another thing is that you need to integrate OSINT in decision-making workflows to enable timely responses. An example again, we have realized that there is a spate in fire incidents in a certain state. What do you then do? You go and collect raw facts of these places. You're able to see them and you're able to get the information. In writing the report, you should not place emphasis on the people that have been affected by saying stories of, oh, you visited these people and the person was crying, all of that. Getting information should be it shouldn't even be empathetic in any sense at all. So it is important that once you have gotten this information, the reports that you are giving show these sources and terminologies are then used. Another thing again I would say is OSINT is best used to anticipate risk and safeguard lives, assets, and national interests. For me, I would say OSINT helps when it comes to when it comes to intelligence gathering or just getting information. For me, it's more proactive than reactive. Because if it's something is open source, it means that the information is happening as it is coming. It's readily available. So what it means is that I can easily sieve it to know, okay, this is what I need to anticipate. These are the things I do not need to anticipate. These are the things I need to do. So it means that whatever has been given to you, the data that has been given to you, as much as possible, do not rely on one source. Use 3 or 4 sources. But let's see that at the end of the day, when you have your intelligence report, it has been able to give factual data that is actionable and evidence-based and should be able to highlight trends. With that, I believe that will be the end of my presentation. We have been able to ascertain what OSINT is, the intelligence cycle, classifications of it, the collection techniques that we have said, and also, I forgot to also put this here. With the rise of AI, I'll give an instance. We have reports whereby you can tell that it is AI, it's written by AI. I don't know if it's just me. I can easily tell a report that is done by AI. And so what we now see these days is that people, especially on LinkedIn posts, they get information, put it on LinkedIn, it creates a scenario for them, and then they put it out there. Not saying that the source is bad, not saying that it should not be used, But you also need to understand that ChatGPT and all these AI sources were made by people. And so, in as much as it helps with the report, it's also important that sometimes you write it in your own language. Does it help with the work? Yes. But for the sake of brain what? Why am I saying this? Analysis has to do with you literally using your intellect. In as much as this information is being made readily available on social media and all of it, it's important that when leveraging AI, we still have to put into consideration the facts that we have gotten. It is still important to gather the facts based on what you think it should be and based on what is readily available, and then be able to corroborate it. Like I said, corroboration. Yes, you could use the information that is being put on the platforms, but it's also important that vetting is prioritized in this. So just to close, in as much as we're getting information anywhere, it is important to vet the information to be sure that the outlook or the analysis or what you have been able to present is factual, is actionable, and can actually be used. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna, for the presentation. It was really interesting and insightful, and I'm sure everybody would agree. So if anybody has any questions, this is the time now. Please feel free, as we have an expert. So do not waste this valuable time to get her insights or clarifications on the topic, or if you want to add any contributions as well, we have enough time for that. So you can either raise your hand and speak, or you can put the question in the chat if you're feeling a little bit shy. So are there any questions or any comments or clarifications? Okay, we do have a question in the chat. What advice would you give somebody who is starting out in OSINT?
All right. I would answer the first question. What advice would I give? I think the first thing I would say is when it comes to open source intelligence, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think for me, what helped me is documentation. And what I did to harness how well I use OSINT is to document how I found something. Not what I found, to document how I found something. I think it's important for you to know how best to gather the information. So if you're good with getting information via newspaper, blogs, all of that, you need to also harness your skill of how you get the information, not what, how. That helps you when you need to get, like I said, tactical and strategic. So that helps you know how best to. So if you need an information that needs to be gotten in the next 2 hours, knowing how you document things would actually help, know with the quality of information that you get. And another thing is, you also need to learn a lot of tools. You need to know a lot of tools, acquaint yourself with a lot of intelligence gathering tools. Like I said, there's TweetDeck. There are other types of platforms that would help. So the first thing I would say is know how you gather your information. How do you gather your information? If they say, oh, something happened, how do you gather the information? Number two, I would say use tools, use the right tools. I mentioned TweetDeck. There are other news sources. So you should know at least top three news sources that you can be able to check. You can put your notifications on them. You're able to get information with them per time. Why this is important is so that you also familiarize yourself with how they get news, how they get information. It kind of helps with the language of speech when you're trying to write your report. So first thing I would say, acquaint yourself with data, know how you get information, not what. How do you get it? Number two, acquaint yourself with some tools and ways of getting the information. And number three, have at least 3 or 4 OSINT outlets. I'll put it that way. When I mean OSINT outlets, I mean newspaper sites, blogs, at least have 3 of each of these forms I've said that would help you corroborate. That way, you are able to analyze trends easier for data-driven decisions and solutions.
Thank you so much. Temitayo, would you like to ask your question?
I think she raised her hand.
Yes, Temitayo, you're on mute. Your hand is raised.
Hello, Temitayo, we can't hear you. Okay, just before we circle,
Yes, there is another question in the chat as well.
we're looking at it. Hi, I'm Nunu from Nigeria. What tools can one use to gather information, data, and analyze them safely? Hi, Nunu. How are you doing? I would say for me, you need to. I personally use TweetDeck. I use like I said, 3 verified sources. I can't mention them because they're, it will look like a bias, but I'm sure of that. You could also use Bing. You could use to verify images. You could use Google for that. That has helped us a lot. And for social media collections, you could use Twint. So Twint is basically Twitter and X, but without an API. You could also use Telegram tools for that. So it depends on the type of information that you actually want to collect. That's another thing to also put into consideration. It depends on the type of information that you want to get. If it is maybe like breaking news, I'll give an instance. A few hours ago, the new Inspector General of Police was announced here in Nigeria, and before it was announced officially, it was just hearsay. But then there were a few sites that we said, okay, if these sites have not put it up, then we're sure it hasn't happened. So you also need to know the type, based on the type of information you want to get, you need to know. So if you want to get breaking news or reports of some certain political activities, you need to go to this site. But you can reach out to me privately. And then I could also be able to share some of them. They have like a list of them. So you'll be able to help you. And the reason why I wouldn't mention some sources is because there are some news sources. So I wouldn't want to mention it so it doesn't look like a bias from one news station to another news station or news outlets.
Good evening. I had issues unmuting my mic
Okay.
earlier. Yeah, so thank you, Anna, for your presentation. It was very insightful. I just want to ask that. Okay, I think what some of the questions have been asked, but then like a buttress, right? What are some of the tools you use to analyze
Can you hear me?
Did you hear me, Anna?
Yes. You said what tools, right? So if you're talking about the tools for gathering
Yes, please.
information, okay, so what kind of information? So that okay, before I even say that, before you came on, I mentioned something. I said I could also share the tools I have, but it depends on the kind of information. I gave an example now where the new Inspector General of Police has been appointed and decorated is the acting Inspector General of Police. And at the time when we wanted to be sure, we started checking. Our clients were asking us, "Oh, this is what has been said. Could you kindly confirm?" Now, hearsay, people were saying it's this person. But then there are some news blogs, at least 3 of them, that were able to look out for. And once they announce it, we put it out there. So it depends on the kind of information. For example, if there is a fire outbreak in a certain location, I go to TweetDeck. Because what TweetDeck does is that it mentions because it's raw facts, so it mentions the location, it mentions the place. Sometimes I get the coordinates, it's able to confirm those places. So for different tools, it depends on the kind of information you're gathering. If it needs to even be about stock exchange, all of those things, there are some news outlets that gives that. Outbreak of diseases, there are some sites that give that. So it depends on the kind of information that you want to get. And also, if you can reach out to me, there are some of them I've been able to create in a document based on the kind of information that I get. I'll be more than happy to share that with you and, show you how to make use of them.
Thank you so much. I hope that answers your question, Temitayo. There is another question in the chat.
Yes, what do I need to look out for to develop strategic intelligence, and how do I eliminate my emotions from reflecting in the strategic reports? This is a very, very, very technical question. If you ask me, what are the things that I look out for in strategic is to identify actors, interests, capabilities, and constraints. So I'm looking at who are the people involved, who are the companies involved, who are the individuals involved. And then when I go to interest, what do they want? What is involved? Who is at loss? Who might potentially win? What's the catch? Capabilities. Is an armed group, is a non-state actor. What are they able to do? What is their track record of incidents and things they've been able to do? And constraints. Does it affect law? Does it affect money? Does it affect legitimacy, geography, all of that? So for strategic intelligence, the first thing I'll say is identify actors, interests, constraints, the people involved. And then another thing is I look out for second or third order effects. What are those things? The border of this specific location has been closed down. Or I'll give an instance, there has been forced subsidy removal. What does that mean? Higher transportation costs. So in as much as there is the effect, which is the announcement of the incident that has been made, what are the effects of it? You have two countries that are having intertribal crisis, and maybe they are an oil producing state, Niger Delta. What does that mean? Would there be shortage of these resources? So you also need to look at this, the second or third, or in some cases, fourth effects. There's food inflation. What does that mean? There might be social unrest. When there's social unrest, there'll be higher, increased security force actions to prevent protest actions, skirmish, and all of that. So I also look out for second, third, or fourth effects. Another thing is that you mentioned how do you handle your emotions. There's one thing that you also need to do. There are some things you cannot change. There are some things that you cannot change. As a human being, there are some things that we draw closer to. You need to analyze, you need to remove analysis from judgments. Your report obviously has said you have observed facts, you have been able to interpret based on what you have said, likelihoods, implications, all of that. When you are writing reports, it should not sound from a judgment point. So you can use phrases like available sources or available incidents suggest, or you can say it is assessed that. So you need to first understand that whatever data that you are collecting, you need to remove emotions, empathy, or any other type of emotions out of it. How can you do that? You need to understand that the report in itself is for decision making, and whatever you write or whatever you find out can make or mar the situation. So think of the implications of you being biased. That's what I do. I think of the implications of it being biased. Is it going to favor me as a person because I'm being biased, or it's not going to or it's going to be unfavorable to the people that actually need it? So what I think of is the long-term implication of things if I'm being biased. And so I gather the information based on what it is. So removing emotions, you need to first know that whatever you do or not do can affect the report or the people involved for a long term. You can also use some analytic techniques, and you can use analytic techniques. You can do fact checking. If you also think that you are being too emotional, you can do fact checking on those things. The emotion aspect of it is not a one-day thing. It's something that you are going to build. You keep building it. It's not something that you can, just let go at first instance. And it's not something that you can even 100% stop, because you're a human being. Emotions are one of the things that make you. So it's just something that you need to, as much as possible, I won't say suppress, but look at the long-term effects of it. That's how I handle it. For me, when I handle emotions, I think of it that if I give this information based on what I think is right, Will it be done based on how I want it or how it's supposed to be? So always think of the long-term and short-term impacts of things. And when you're writing it, be sure that in your language, it doesn't sound empathetic. You sound logical. And for the individual that said, are they certifications? Yes, they are. Some of them are free. There is one with the Caspon group. But it covers OSINT basics, intelligence cycle, online anonymity, ethical investigation methods. I would be able, if you reach out to me, I should be able to share those links. If you check Udemy, so I know Udemy, they have that, but I think Udemy's own is more on IT security, but you can check that out. Udemy, Allison, I can't really think of anyone else, but I know that there's the one of Capstone, Udemy, and Allison. But I'm very sure if you should also check it out, you would be able to see. Some of them are paid, some of them are not paid. But please be able to check if it's authentic, be able to check if people have spoken about them, if they're just new, and if they certify. I think I've answered all the questions.
Thank you so much. I think there is another question from Josephine. Oh, no, that is the one about certifications and the courses.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have answered all of the questions. So if that is everything, then we will. Okay, there's more questions.
Okay.
There is a question. I will read it out for the people. Since AI is supposed to be a learning machine, is it advisable to use it to coin the assessment and recommendation part of my analysis?
Okay, thank you very much. That's also a very, very important question. I would say this information that is being given on AI is also open source. Yes, AI can be used to, you can use it to support the assessment and recommendation, but it should not be for the final decision or for the decision to be made. It can be a thinking aid. When I mean a thinking aid, it can help with analysis. So you could ask, but you also need to ask for sources. So sometimes what I do is, if I can't get readily available information on a topic and I check it out, I would ask for the source. And so when I check for the sources and I see it is good, I would corroborate it with what I have. It should not be the final reports. Because here's the thing, the information that you're telling AI to do, it's based on other people, what they have been able to gather, So what you should do is that you should just it should help with your analysis, but it should not be the final results to reasoning. Yes, it's appropriate in assessment. You can use it to corroborate information and aid analysis, but not for the final event. Not for the final event at all. And you also need to keep in mind that the people that gather this information, most of them might have done it with intent. So if somebody is writing a piece or an expose on a certain topic, it could be based on his emotions, based on his concerns. And if that thing is readily available and you say, oh, ChatGPT, what are exposés on this certain topic, and it brings that out, and you copy and paste it, just know that you have already made the report biased based on what the person has said. Yes, it's on ChatGPT, but let's not forget that we're trying to make it as logical as possible. And if we're picking that out based on what ChatGPT has got, it has already removed a bit of it being factual from it. So in as much as AI is a good tool, you could use it to corroborate your analysis, but not as a final report. It helps because it could even tell you to send you links. So it's a good tool that can be used, but not for final decision. You can't start asking it, what would you think in your opinion? It's going to say based on what it has been able to gather. So based on what you have gathered, you just use it to corroborate and know what is the best decision or the best recommendation to put in your intelligence report, not what AI has said. So it can be used for corroboration and for analysis, not as a final decision.
Thank you so much. And yes, just to add on the question, that AI is not neutral at all. So please do not take it as a final say on matters of evolving peace and security issues. And it doesn't always have the up-to-date information that some of the platforms and programs that you have mentioned So do continue to use those. And when it comes to AI generally, brainstorming is good, but let's not exchange our thinking and our logic for a machine. Let's keep using them and keep them intact. Now, if there are no more questions, we will wrap up. This is just the final call for questions.
Pauline, just to add, as analysts, as people that are well in tune with what's happening, we also need to understand that brain rot is a thing. Analysis has to do with the mind. To sharpen your mind, it's important that you also make use of it. AI is good, it seems easy, but we also need to understand that the mind has to be at work. As an analyst, you're called an analyst for something. You are called an analyst for something. Brain rot is real. And it's a major issue when you have to do with these apps because it makes you lazy. There are days there. I remember when I started analysis, these things were not readily there. But as it also helps keep you up to date with information and data. So because I was gathering this information and things, it was easier for me. Because now if you should ask me questions that happen in DRC, because I'm the one that gathered it and I did the analysis, it is evergreen in my head. AI, you cannot remember because you didn't gather it. And so it's going to go away like this. And that's how brain rot starts. So very important.
Yes. I think those are great final words to have. So we all engage our brains, please. Yes. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. But thank you especially to Anna for such a great presentation. Very engaging, very clear, very concise as well. We will definitely share the recording and the presentation. And yes, if you could please give us a list of the platforms you recommended and for the certifications as well. We will also share that with you.
Okay.
So if you are not a member of the African Youth Security Network, then please, you can find us at africanysn.com. If you are part of our WhatsApp group, then we will share all the information there and you will have access to it. But if you don't, then you can find us on our website and sign up. So thank you so much for coming. I hope everybody enjoys their evening, and please do keep an eye out on our socials, our LinkedIn, our Twitter, X, and our Instagram for upcoming events, discussions, and things like this. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.